Alright, before we get started, I just want to say, if you hear the loud fan, ignore it. I feel like I say this in every video, but it's at like max speed, so it might be extra loud because we're in the middle of a heat wave in the Midwest, or just all over the world, you know, because AI data centers. So if you hear the fan, please ignore it. I'm gonna try to talk as loud as I can to project my voice, but yeah, I need the fan on or else I will melt in this video. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. If you are new, if you're not new, welcome back to my channel. My name is Marina and this is going to be another monthly wrap up for the month of June. Guys, the fact that we are already in July is a little bit scary. It's scary. I feel like this year is going by so fast. The fact that we're over halfway into the year, I'm not a fan of that, but we don't need to talk about how time is scary and not real. We can talk about books instead. All of these books are ones that you guys have heard me talk at length about in previous reading vlogs, so I don't know what more I can say about them. I feel like I've talked about my reading slump at least in every video for the past month, so I'm not going to beat that dead horse anymore. You guys already know what time it is. Unless you're new here, then that's what time we're on, reading slump time. So yeah, I read in total 5 books this month, which isn't bad. At least like 4 of them I have mentioned and talked about for every video. So I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book I read is actually one that I was reading in the last week of May and finished the first day of June. So technically this could have easily been in my May wrap up, but alas, it didn't make the cut. I don't really remember much of it. I read The Burning Side by Sarah DeMoff. This is the author that wrote that one book that people love to talk about that I forget. The Bright Ears, is that what it's called? I think that's what it's called. Yeah, I have had that book on hold at the library going on like 3 months at this point. So when I saw that the audiobook for her latest release was available through Libro FM, I was like, you know, let me just listen to this. I wanted to know what people were talking about with The Bright Ears because everyone's like, oh, the writing's so good, the story was so beautiful and impactful and yada yada, and I was like, I feel FOMO, so I wanted to read this instead. And like I said, this is her newest book. When I read it, it came out like within like a few weeks, so I was like, let me just hop on the train of this. This book, we are following a couple, April and Leo, and they are going through a lot of marital problems. You kind of get the sense of that at the start of the book when their house burns down. Those two and their children have to move in with April's family, her parents, and through this journey of, you know, getting their house stuff together, making sure that their kids are okay and all this, they kind of unpack everything that has gone wrong in their relationship over the course of like, I think 10 years they were together. When they move back into April's family's house, you kind of understand her parents' dynamic and what they are willing to do to help their marriage while April and Leo's marriage is crashing down. It's basically a story about family going through the aftermath of guilt, grief, and memories that are a little bit tainted due to this fire. I gave it 4 stars. I really like this book. I also like the narrators. The narrators were Stacy Gonzalez, Timothy Andres Pabon, and Jackie Sanders. All 3 of those narrators did a really good job. They really sold the story for me. If I'm being honest, I don't know how to put into words why I like this book so much. I think even in my storygraph review I put, I don't know why I gave this 4 stars, it's just a vibe, which is so helpful now in the month of July when I have to review it. But I liked how when I read in each character's point of view, you specifically get 3 characters' point of views. You get Leo and April's point of view, but you also get Deb, who is April's mom. And all 3 characters are imperfect. And that's what I like the most when I read books like this. I would like to understand the ins and outs of a character without shying away from specifically the bad parts, especially when it's like talking about the downfall of a marriage. There's usually not just one person who's at fault. And for Leo and April's case, I really did enjoy reading their perspectives on their marriage and what one person would say that was definitely the other person's fault. That other person will say, well, no, this happened because this person did this. And it was like a cause and effect constantly. All of their problems happened because one person did this, but they only did this thing because the other person did this. And I thought that that was really frustrating, but like I said, I enjoyed it because it is a story of miscommunication, but it's the type of romance with miscommunication that I like, because by the end you could tell that both parties knew that they were at fault to some capacity. And it's just the complexities of what you're willing to fight for in your marriage. Do you think that love is truly worth fighting for when you've had so many downfalls over the course of time through like your love for your partner and through having kids with your partner, which adds another element of trying to work through it? Do you think all of this is worthy enough to want to push through the relationship? And you see kind of like the juxtaposition with this in Deb's point of view. Again, Deb is April's mom, and Deb and April's dad have been married for a long time, going on, I think I want to say like 40-50 years at the point that we're in present time in the story. And April views her parents as the perfect parents, and I'm not going to give anything away, but you definitely see when you get into Deb's point of view that that's not the case, that April's mom and dad were definitely like trying to find their way. The way that Deb tells their love story, it's definitely one that's full of, again, a lot of hardship, but she did learn to love her husband and is willing to stick through this marriage with everything that it takes. So like I said, the juxtaposition of Deb and her husband and April and Leo was just really satisfying in a way, because like you see this one married couple that's wanting to work through any and everything to make their relationship work because they know that their love is strong enough to maintain that foundation of what a perfect marriage is supposed to be. Whereas with April and Leo, this is like something that they don't think they can work through because they don't know if they can trust each other anymore. They don't know if they can even like be in the same room together because it's just so fresh. I liked it. I liked it enough to give it 4 stars, and I still think like a few months later in July that I am satisfied with that rating. It makes me really excited to read The Bright Years whenever I get that book from the library. Whenever my hold wants to come in, that would be great after months, thank you. But whenever I get a chance to read that, I will be reading it with haste because I do want to just like read her stuff physically to figure out if I would enjoy it as much as I did like the audiobook of The Burning Side. So we'll just have to see. And then after that, it took me weeks to finish a single book in June. So the next couple of books are ones that you guys know I finished because I finished them in a recent reading vlog. So next book I read is the only book at this point that exists, The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. Do I even need to talk about this book? I'm sure you guys are so tired of hearing of me talk about this book that it's really it's not necessary. Now that it took me a full month to finish it, I think I owe it to myself to kind of put my thoughts into words in this wrap up because I have a lot of thoughts. Me and Anne Rice have been on a journey for the past year. I have so many mixed feelings about Anne Rice, not even just her books, but like her as a person. I'm not the biggest fan of Anne Rice, so I was very hesitant to continue reading the books because you guys know I'm obsessed with the show Interview with the Vampire, now The Vampire Lestat. Because I love those shows so much, I was really willing to read the books that the show is based off of. And when I read Interview with the Vampire last year, it was not my cup of tea at all. So I was very hesitant to pick up The Vampire Lestat. Hesitant meaning like it took me a year. It took me a full year to pick up The Vampire Lestat. But I wanted to do it because the show starting, as we all know, I hope that you guys are watching it. It's so good. And I was like, you know what, better late than never. Let's start the book. And my God, I feel like this book completely flipped Interview with a Vampire on its head in every single way, and I think that's why I enjoyed it enough to give this book 3.5 stars. I remember giving Interview with the Vampire like 1.5 stars, which is not good, obviously. This book follows the vampire Lestat. Lestat is a character that you meet in Interview with the Vampire. He is Louis Dupont du Lac, the main character of that book's companion. They're each other's vampire companions. And the way that the first book ends with Lestat, it's kind of like up in the air as to what Lestat is like doing after Louis kind of leaves him alone. So in this book, you get a sense of what he's doing. He comes back. Explaining this book is so funny because the plot of it is so unhinged. Lestat de Liancourt decides to come out of his grave in the 80s after like being asleep for a while, and he's like, I want to be a rock star. And that's what he does. He becomes like a platinum selling rock star with his human band, and in the midst of his rock stardom, he kind of takes us on a past of how he became a vampire, what his story is, the details that Louis doesn't know, which were not included in the Interview with the Vampire book. This is basically Lestat's life story, and it's so cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I don't don't think I could describe it any other way than that. Lestat is one of those characters that you either love or you hate. There's no in between because he is a lot. You get a sense of his personality in Interview with the Vampire, but because it's told through Louis' perspective, I don't think you would fully understand who Lestat is unless you were to read his book. And his book is not easy to read, I'm gonna be honest. One of the reasons why I feel a little bit iffy about Anne Rice's books is because of the way she tells her stories. All of her books play with the idea of perspective. Each book is told from a different person's perspective, and sometimes the characters could be lying. You never really know. It's a game of like chess that you're playing when you pick up an Anne Rice book, and each of the characters are different pieces to someone else's story. It's an interesting concept, all that to say. But when it comes to writing in Lestat's perspective and Louis' perspective, I feel like Anne Rice just does this thing where it's just a bunch of word vomiting. The first book, the reason why I didn't like it was because I just couldn't get behind Louis as a character. I thought he was really annoying. The story itself was honestly fine, but told from Louis' perspective, I just kept getting taken out of it. Like, it was focused on so many details that I feel like were not necessary to the story itself and what Louis was trying to say in his interview. Whereas with Lestat's story, Lestat is kind of like the same but opposite, where Lestat will go on like a 10-page tangent about like God, and then he will for some reason just start like shouting in the ether, and then he will bury himself underground, and then he'll go back to the present timeline of him being a rock star playing to a stadium of like 10,000 people. It's a very unhinged story, but like the way that the story flows is kind of like that. It's not that I didn't like it, because obviously I gave it 3.5 stars. It's very much the Lestat I expected. There's no way. My Roku City is on my TV right now, and I'm seeing Brinity for Life. Love Island fans, if you have Roku, go on the Roku City skyscraper thing. They have a Brinity for Life. That's crazy. Anyway, it's not that I don't like the story, it's just like the way that it's written, it's just, it feels like I was on a roller coaster of just different scenarios that I was trying to figure out how they added up. I feel like Lestat's whole life is just like heartbreak, trauma, heartbreak, trauma, heartbreak, trauma, and yet he's like this very like optimistic, kind of happy-go-lucky character, and it was very daunting to read, because if I went through half the stuff Lestat went through, I would definitely bury myself underground forever. It took a lot for me to read his story, especially in the beginning, because I'm not gonna lie, his story in the beginning is kind of like boring, but I might be feeling that way because a majority of the beginning is of course him as a human. Like, not all of the story is him as a vampire, it's his whole life story. And the stuff about the journey with him and his mom Gabrielle, I just couldn't. It might just be because I don't like Gabrielle. Gabrielle is a very polarizing character in the fandom, but yeah, I couldn't get behind him and his mother's relationship for obvious reasons, but I feel like that really dragged the book. It wasn't until like she left that I could get into it, but then when she leaves, we get like, that's another thing. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm like not making sense in this review, but another part about this is the fact that like we get multiple stories from other people in Lestat's own book, and it was ridiculous. There is one character named Marius who gets like 50 pages worth of story about his own story having nothing to do with Lestat. Marius's story dragged out so long, it's ridiculous. With Armand, I could understand, his was like maybe like 10 to 20 pages. Marius, I was like, why are you here? Especially because I know that like the Vampire Chronicles books, they're like 13 books. I'm sure Marius is gonna have some impact, some story in some other book. Why is he in the Vampire Lestat's book? It's just like the way that Anne Rice writes, I can't fully get behind, because it's just like a whole bunch of stuff that I'm sure will matter later on in books, but a lot of nothing in terms of like Lestat's own book, in my opinion. Like, I'm sure whatever he found out about Armand's story and Marius's story is going to play a big part in later books, but we did not need their whole life story in Lestat's book. It was getting to a point where I was like, can we just get back? Can we get back to what we were talking about before? But yeah, I think Lestat as a character is just way too fun for me to dislike his book. I think I said this before, it's just Lestat fucking around and finding out for 500 pages. Every time someone tells him not to do something, he does it. And I don't know, I think that that's just really funny. I know that he's known as like the Brat Prince. I think that's what he's called in the like Vampire Chronicles universe, and I think that that's a good title for a character like him to have, because he is very bratty and I enjoy him. So yeah, I gave this 3.5 stars. I'm definitely going to be reading Queen of the Damned because I know that the timeline of the Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned are like one and the same, though you wouldn't be able to tell because the majority of the Vampire Lestat takes place in the past, but they are like on the same timeline. So I will probably be reading that one. I don't know if it will take me another year, who knows, but I am interested. I don't know if I will be continuing the Vampire Chronicles after I finish Queen of the Damned. It's just 13 books is a lot, and especially when I'm not even sure if I can really handle Anne Rice's writing style enough for 3 books, let alone 13. I think I need to figure out what I really want to prioritize here. I love the Vampire Chronicles for the Louis Lestat and Claudia of it all. Once we start getting into other characters, I'm a bit more iffy, if I'm being honest, but we'll see. I'm open. Oh my god, perfect timing. My friend Darby literally just sent me Tomodachi Life on her Switch. Guys, that's supposed to be Armand from Interview with the Vampire. My friend is so funny. Like I said, you guys already know what these next few books are going to be because I finished them in my 12-hour marathon book video. That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf by Kimberly Lemming is the next book I read in the month of June. This is the sequel to That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, the first book in the Mead Mishap series. This is the second book, and this follows Brie, a cheese maker. You get it, Brie, cheese. Kimberly Lemming, she knows she loves a good like pun. And then it also follows, what's his name? Felix. It follows Brie and Felix. And Brie ends up in a situation where she accidentally ends up throwing a love potion onto Felix, a werewolf. We kind of get a feel of who Felix is in the first book in the Mead Mishap series, but because it's been 2 years since I read that book, I was not gonna lie, very lost in terms of not even just like the characters and where they left off in the first book, but also the world building of this series, of this world that Kimberly Lemming has. It gets a little bit lost in the sauce to me. I'm sure it like isn't that convoluted for some, and it's not really meant to be. This is supposed to be like a very unserious paranormal romance series. You're not supposed to think about like the drama going on in the world and like the battles and the war and stuff. But whenever it was briefly mentioned how the last book ended and the effects of that book going into this one, I was like, what is going on here? So I didn't pay attention to it too much, but all you need to know is that now this werewolf is determined to convince Brie that she is his mate, because to Brie, he's only doing this because she threw a love potion at him, and it's only gonna last like 2 weeks. So Brie is like, if we could just push through this for 2 weeks, then you will see I am not your mate, and that this is not real, and that you can get over me, and it'll all just go away. And so that's what the book is. That's how the book is. It's just a ridiculously funny, quirky, smutty romantasy book about a cheesemaker and a werewolf, and I really liked it. I don't remember the first book well enough to know if I like it more than the first one, but I think that they are both enjoyable in nature. If you really want like a funny book, a ridiculously funny book, like when I tell you that the humor is not even just the banter, the ridiculousness when it comes to like the characters and their sense of humor and their stories and how they end up in situations, it's just so funny. If you need that as like a palate cleanser and you're wondering what book to read, I really do recommend any book in this series. I haven't read the third one yet, obviously, but I am gonna plan on getting to it when I need something easy and fun to read. Like I picked this up because I knew that I needed something light and fun while I'm in the middle of this reading slump, and it was very easy to read, very fun. I gave this 3 stars. Highly recommend. If you like, especially like emotionally closed off girlfriend, golden retriever, personable, outgoing boyfriend, then you will like the couple in this book as well. The next book is one, again, from the previous video that I will keep short and sweet. Audition for the Fox by Martin Cahill. This book follows a girl named Nessie who is on a journey to find purpose through the 99 pillars that are worshipped in her land. Basically, everyone auditions for these pillars. These pillars are kind of like gods. And so when you audition for these pillars, you are expected to be like an acolyte for them. You harness their power, use their power for good, to give back to society. But Nessie has failed every single audition for almost all 99 pillars. She only has 3 more pillars to audition for, and one of them is the fox. And no one really auditions for the fox because, you know, foxes, they're tricksters. They like to sneak up on you. They're not to be fully trusted, but Nessie is desperate enough to earn her place in the world, to have some sort of life purpose, that she's like, no, I'm going to audition for the fox. What's the worst that could happen? Famous last words. She ends up getting the audition with the fox, and he is so humored by her attempt at auditioning that he's like, okay, your audition is going to take place 300 years in the past, when the revolution happens. You have to convince these people, your people, to start an active war to earn back their freedom. And she's like, what? I did not sign up for that. She's like, I thought I was just auditioning. Like, this is crazy. And he's like, yeah, no. Once you do that, you can be my right-hand man, my acolyte, whatever. I'm gonna help you every step of the way though. Like, don't even worry about it. So now Nessie is in a predicament of like basically trying to start a revolutionary war and get liberation for her people 300 years in the past. And this book is so heartwarming. I got this book months ago as like a little gift from a sales representative from a publishing house, and the person was like, I could definitely see this book having like unlimited sequels. Like, the world is so expansive that it could be its own series, because this book is really short. It's less than 200 pages. It's a novella, and I definitely see what she means. Like, I honestly wish that this book was longer. I wish that it wouldn't end. I think that the adventures that Nessie and the fox spirit could have in the future would be really fun to read. The messaging of this book is also really beautiful. It's like reminding you that you're not falling behind just because you haven't found your purpose in life yet. Like, it just takes time. You can't give up. You have to keep trying. I'm obsessed with the fox spirit. Story of the Fox was just really sad, but it shows a lot about like how looks could be deceiving even for gods. You know, you can't always trust the way that others are perceived based off of the stories you've heard, because people and sometimes deities and gods are more complex than that. And I really love this story. I'm hoping that there will be sequels in the future. Would definitely be open to reading more. I haven't read anything other than this by Martin Cahill, but I liked how he wrote the characters. I understood each of the characters within, like, again, less than 200 pages, and it was just like really refreshing to read a book like this that isn't a part of a series that you could commit to with little to no stakes, and you still walk out loving every single part of it. I gave this book 4 stars as well. A good, great, fun time, and again, a book that you can read in one sitting for a 12-hour readathon. All right, and the last book I read is The Heirs by Farida Abike Yemade. This is her latest release. I'm obsessed with her book, Ace of Spades. That was like one of my favorite books a few years ago, and ever since then I've been meaning to read more of her stuff. I have her other book right here, Where Sleeping Girls Lie. I'm gonna read that book hopefully sometime this year as well, but I saw again that this was available through Libro FM and I picked it up. So this book follows a group of kids that were taken in by a man, their adoptive father, and this man takes in these 5 kids from all over the globe to be prodigies. He's doing like a nurture versus nature experiment on these kids for their whole entire childhood. Basically, the kids, when they're toddlers, get to pick something that they want to experiment with, see if they're good at, and this is something that they are supposed to stick with for the rest of their lives. And, you know, we have one person who's good at instruments, one person who's good at sports, one person who's good at math. All of these kids have different talents minus like one. They grew up in, you could easily say, is like an abusive household because of the way that their father trained them to be these prodigy kids, despite the fact that at some point they do all kind of end up hating what they are good at because it's not fun for them. The book starts off with all of the kids having to back home after not being home for a while. They're like, we need to go to this gala that happens every like 5 years. It's a family commitment, and at this point the siblings don't really even talk anymore, but they're like, you know, dad's gonna want us to pull up, we gotta pull up. And when they do, the night of the gala, their father ends up getting murdered. The kids have to figure out who did it, why they did it, and they also are a little bit confused because they don't really trust each other either. Like I said, all the kids have a little bit of underlying beef with their dad for obvious reasons. So any of the kids could have done it. Their dad also had a lot of enemies outside of the house, whether it be like evil reporters or family friends. There are a lot of suspects, and so when they're all in this one house for the gala, it gets closed down and all the suspects are together and the kids are trying to figure out who did it. Kind of gives the first season of Umbrella Academy, back when Umbrella Academy was really good, you know? So yeah, that's what the story is. I have a lot of mixed feelings about the story, okay? When I first started it, I was really into it. I liked being able to meet each of the characters one by one, because you are seeing a lot of perspectives in the book. You're getting all 5 of the kids' perspectives on top of like other side characters that you meet while the book goes on. And so I liked being able to see how the siblings act with each other versus how they act around their father or other characters. I thought seeing that was interesting. One thing I didn't like about the book is that although we got all of that in the beginning, that's all we got about the characters. I feel like I didn't really get to know more about the characters enough to understand motives, and that was really frustrating to me, especially for a murder mystery book, because like I said, each of the characters have their own motives, but you want to understand the reasoning why, like more in detail, at least for me. Like, you guys know I'm not a murder mystery person, but I feel like what I was able to learn about the characters was so surface level, and I did not like that at all. Like, these kids, all they knew about themselves growing up was the identity that their father placed on them when it comes to their talents and what they're good at. And I think even reading in their own perspectives, you see that the kids don't see themselves outside of their talents. So it was very hard to connect with any of the characters really and understand them outside of them being prodigies. And I couldn't get into that. You guys know I'm a very like character driven reader. If I don't like the characters, or if I can't really get an understanding of who the characters are, then I just can't really read the book and enjoy it. I thought that the murder mystery aspect of the book was okay. Like, when I found out who killed the father, I was like, I guess that's fine. I guess that makes sense. The way that it closed out, I felt like dragged on a bit. I didn't really know how to feel about it. I think that I would have liked to know more about the father, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm surprised throughout the whole entire book we didn't get a single POV chapter from the father. After reading Ace of Spades, I was going into this with a little bit of high expectations, because I remember giving Ace of Spades, I think, 5 stars when I first read it. I haven't reread it since, so maybe my opinion might skew over time. But yeah, I thought that this would be something that I liked, because it was compared to Umbrella Academy. Like, I think it's even in the blurb, like Umbrella Academy meets Clue or something like that. It's basically the same premise. The character work that's done in this book isn't on the same level, in my opinion. It's fun to get a vibe of like that mystery thriller feeling of the whodunit, but at some point in the book I do think we kind of forgot that factor of the whodunit, because we didn't start actually thinking about that until over halfway into the book. I think I mentioned this in like one of my previous videos too, but because the first like 50 to 55% of the book was like laying the groundwork of like, okay, this is the gala, we're talking at the gala, we're meeting different characters at the gala, and when we're at the 60% mark, we are finally like, okay, let's actually try to find out who killed this guy, guys. Let's actually try to figure out who murdered our father. It happened a little bit too late in the book. The last 10% of the book was just like an epilogue of sorts. So 30% of the book, 60 to 90% of the book was just like figuring out the whodunit. It was very like rushed, and I just wasn't a fan. All that to say, I did give it 2.5 stars. I do think the story itself is fun, like I said, but it's not like outstanding or anything. Those are the 5 books that I read in June. If you read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts are on them. Tell me what you read in June, if you read anything at all. Are you also slumping? Because same. I want to say I'm slowly getting out of it. I think I am, because I am actively reading books. I can't get through 1 book a week. Like, the last 4 books I mentioned in this wrap up were read in this last week of June. Like, I kid you not, like I finished all 4 of those books in the last week because I just couldn't find it in myself to read or finish any book for most of the month. So I'm hoping that July isn't going to be like that, but I guess we'll just have to see. If you enjoyed this, thank you so much. If you'd like to follow me on my social media, it will all be linked down in the description below. And yeah, I think that's it. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye everyone.